All right, here's Jason. Hi, Jason.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Really good.
Awesome. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started. I think we've got everybody here. I'm sure more people will be joining us as we get underway. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm Shenoa Farnsworth. I'm the managing partner at Blue Startups, and we're a venture accelerator located here in downtown Honolulu. And we've been running our accelerator program here for 9 years. Yes, 9 years. We've invested now in 99 companies. Our first company of which went public this fall, very exciting, Volta Charging. So those of you who are local to Hawaii have seen the Volta charging stations around town. That company did come through our very first cohort back in 2013 and was listed on the NYSE in August. Via SPAC, maybe we'll talk about SPACs today, huh, Chris?
Sounds good.
He's got some experience with that in the travel space. So Blue Startups invests in and accelerates startup companies in the technology space. We are focused in part on the travel sector. So travel and tourism is one of the buckets that we invest in, along with software and gaming and sustainability. We also look for companies in Hawaii and from Hawaii. We look for companies in the Pac Rim. So East meets West is a big part of our thesis as well. So those companies that are coming into Asia or out of Asia into the US are of interest to us. And then we have a strong, penchant for female founders also. So Maddie's here representing that group as well as the travel startups. So we do aim to have at least half of our cohorts female founded or female run. And as if any of you are very familiar with the tech space, you'll know that's not easy, but it's certainly something that we're dedicated to. Blue Startups was started by myself and Maya Rogers and Hank Rogers. Maya and Hank Rogers also own the Tetris company. Yes, the video game. You can't see my office right now, but I'm surrounded by Tetris and Tetris-y things. all things Tetris here all the time. So Tetris is headquartered in Honolulu. Some people don't know that. Tetris is a licensing company. They license their IP all over the world. And one of our goals here at Blue Startups is to get many other companies to be located in Hawaii and licensing their IP all over the world. So that's kind of the origin story for Blue and our mission as well. And we are right now recruiting for cohort 14. So we wanted to launch this series. This is our first in a series of webinars that will familiarize you with the Blue Ohana, as we call it. So folks that are affiliated with us, we have a big network, both locally and nationally and globally, that participate in the Blue program. So either as alumni, like Madi, or as mentors, like Jason, who's a mentor and an alumni, or investors like Chris, who's an investor and a mentor. So we bring people in all kinds of ways, and we put them to work in many ways for our companies. So you'll get to know a few of the faces today and hopefully join us for future webinars as well. I hope that you're interested in the topics. These are topics that are near and dear to our hearts. So things that we're interested in investing in, and founders we're interested in investing in, and that's kind of the general overview of the series that we're launching today. So I hope you'll tune in for more of that. So today's gonna be pretty casual. We all know each other pretty well, Maddie and Chris and Jason. So we're just gonna have a good conversation here about the state of the travel industry today. And then I'm hoping we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So if you folks have a question, you can put it in the Q&A function or raise your hand and be brave and come on screen and ask it. So we'll get to that in a minute. But I want to start with introductions, of course. So Maddie, I'll start with you and have you introduce yourself and a little bit about your company as well.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Shenoa. Hi, everyone. My name is Madi. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Mount. We were very recent alumni. We were in cohort 13. So that was fun. I guess what we do, we're in the travel space. We basically are a software platform that allows you to take whatever you own and turn it into a rentable amenity. So right now we work with Airbnb hosts to basically trick out the property and have it feel like an all-inclusive resort when you come and stay. So that's what we're up to. Very excited about the Blue program and cohort 14.
All right. And Maddie was, just to give you a little more flavor, she was our star fundraiser for cohort 13. Pretty much every investor she talked to was like, take my money, take my money. So she's she can teach a whole class just on fundraising, and maybe we'll do that. I'm sure it would be of interest to folks to hear all your tips and tricks, which she did share with the cohort as well. But yeah, when Maddie gives a pitch, pretty much people throw money at her. So it's a very enviable skill for most of our entrepreneurs. All right, Chris Hemmeter.
Hi, everybody. Chris Hemmeter here. I'm Managing Director of Thayer Ventures. We are a early stage venture capital fund. And when we say early stage, Series A, Series B, typical entry point, sector focus. So all we do is travel and mobility technology. We're just finishing up investing out of our third fund and launching our fourth fund in the coming weeks. So deep in the travel space, and eager to talk about it further.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. And for those of you who don't know, Chris has local roots here in Hawaii and has been a great friend of both Blue Startups and the whole Hawaii ecosystem and community here for many, many years, always willing to give his time and his kokua to us to really help us grow and get bigger and better as we go. So thanks for that, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Jason.
Hey, hello, everybody. Chris, good to see you. Maddie, good to see you. Shanoa, always good to see you. My name is Jason Cutinella. I'm the founder and CEO of NMG Network. We build custom and curated media channels for the hospitality, luxury residential, and travel space as a whole. Been a part of Blue Startups, I feel like, since the beginning. Been a mentor for quite a bit of time. Was able to go through cohort 13 with Maddie. It was a great experience. And I'm looking forward to continuing to build with the Blue family and get this company to a global level.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, as Jason mentioned, he's been a mentor here for a long time and has been growing his business here in Hawaii for a long time, but took the big leap last year to really take it global and expand his company. So we were able to make a small investment there and help him hopefully get launched into the global environment. And it's going to be a big success story for Hawaii. He already is, but it's going to be even bigger, I know. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll get started on our questions. So I think COVID, of course, top of mind for everybody. I feel like we keep having the same conversation, but it changes ever so slightly every couple of weeks or so, right? So we just had Omicron. Now that's starting to diminish. Things are starting to open up. I don't want to jinx myself, but it definitely feels like really this time we're going to open up. I hope that's true, but I want to know from our industry experts what you're hearing, what you're thinking in the current environment. Are we really ready to get back to business here in the travel space, or are we taking baby steps? Kind of what's your opinion on that? So I'll start with Jason since he was just talking to us.
Yeah, so I feel we're going to be 100%, if not even beyond better. The thing that we all need to realize is preparing and understanding what the travel space and what's needed. For my world, it's leisure and luxury, right? I've always kind of very focused in on that. And the leisure and luxury space, even during COVID, actually was booming in certain destinations around the world. So what made me focus more coming up post-pandemic here is to really fine tune my business model and not accept or not do jobs just to do them anymore. So I really feel like, again, and this is just going for the NMG's world, is the more we focus on the leisure and luxury and boutique, I like to say, because it doesn't necessarily have to be luxury, but if it's if it's a boutique into stature, like that means it's special, right? I look at an air carrier like Hawaiian Airlines. It's an international carrier, but it's still classified as a boutique airline because they give you an extra amount of service level. So that's kind of what what I realized during the pandemic is continue to focus on more of again, the leisure and luxury travel space.
Mhm. All right, cool. Chris, what do you think here? Are we nearing the end, or are we entering into a whole nother thing with this Ukrainian situation? That's
Yeah, right.
thing kind of talk about.
It's an issue. It depends on the perspective you take, right? I think that if you take the perspective of technology companies, we've entered, I think, a very, very dynamic and exciting new phase in travel, and we've been on that road now for a good year. I mean, what the pandemic did is it caught traditional travel supply and the incumbents of this $8 trillion global dynamic value chain totally flat-footed and unprepared, right? So those companies have now reflected on that, and they did so rather quickly. I would say it was really late 2020 when we started to see a dramatic increase in attitudes towards innovation, experimentation, all because companies realized that they had to be more agile, they had to be more productive and flexible, so that if anything like this ever happened again, they could respond. I think at the same time, the pandemic caused a dramatic consumer shift in certain directions. And so there are powerful tailwinds in the categories. For example, the categories that Madi is working in, powerful tailwinds. Consumers are driving to these new and innovative form factors, mostly because they were forced to during the first summer of the pandemic, because it was a safe place to go. Now they realize they like it, because there is no such thing as a 2-bedroom hotel room. So suddenly, alternative accommodations are becoming hot. And then you've got all of this opportunity to digitize services around it. And the same thing in Jason's category, focusing on leisure and lifestyle. People have realized after being locked up for 2 years that life is about experiences, not things. And so there's this powerful desire to rush out and experience the world. And, and we're even seeing it so powerfully that it blends into business. So business travel extending into leisure weekends and so forth. So it's, I think the dynamics in travel are the most exciting that they've been in a generation from the perspective of technology, entrepreneurs, and innovators. If you were to take the perspective of supply, again, it comes back to, it depends. I wouldn't want to be the Marriott Marquis in downtown Washington, D.C., sitting on top of 300,000 square feet of meeting space, right? But I'd sure love to be a luxury lifestyle hotel in Miami.
Yep.
So it really depends. But exciting time. I think that the war in Europe, it's even terrifying to say those words, the war in Europe, it remains to be seen what the impact will be, but I think it'll be hyper regional. I don't think it's going to truly be global, and it's likely not to affect core, leisure travel for a while.
Yeah. Well, I really hope that you're right about that, Chris. And I hope that for everyone's sake that it's very quickly comes to a conclusion. But it does feel like the travel industry is getting like the right hook, the left hook, stay down, told you to stay down. So it's a little disconcerting, I think, at the moment. Madi, what are you seeing? What do you think? Are we at the end of this pandemic? Are you worried about the Ukraine? What's your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, we're in the short-term rental industry. So we're pretty excited, actually, not, with the world events, but just the fact that the market has seen an increase over the last 2 years. As Chris said, no one wants to be in a hotel room when you can be in a 3-bed luxury villa, on the coast of Spain. Right, I know. And to tie that in with experiences, what we're seeing is that people are willing to open up their wallets a lot more, which basically ties into what Mount is doing, opening up these upsells and just experiences to people. But there's definitely a blend. I'd say there's a blend across different industries when you look at private real estate, when you're looking at travel and work. And I think in 5 years, no matter what happens, it's probably just going to be this nomadic traveler worker that is kind of this industry, and it's not going to be travel, work, and commercial real estate. I think they're all going to be one. So it's just a lot of blending, and it's a good shift. I'd say, crazy world events cause innovation. So yeah, very excited.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's interesting, right? We've talked about a few things like luxury travel, the short-term rental market, and the digital nomad, right? All being kind of trends that have emerged or stayed strong in the last 2 years through the pandemic. Are there other trends that you're seeing, or do you think those 3 trends, Maddie, question to you, will stay the course? I mean, is that the future of travel, or was that a kind of a blip and things will go back to normal?
From our perspective, I don't think things will go back to normal. We've already seen it happen in Europe. There's these things called apart hotels. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Where they're basically taking apartments and turning them into hotels. So it's like, instead of having your villa that's an Airbnb property, this whole apartment is now an Airbnb property. And it's catered to the nomadic traveler worker. So I think that's probably going to come here as a trend, and see how it goes. And yeah, there's lots of companies jumping into that, like Sonder and Vacasa, and the Guild is one too. So there's a ton of companies capitalizing on that.
And I think, the thing that I would add to that is, the reaction by the incumbents to this move is also really interesting, right? So the hotel industry is not just going to stand by and let the accommodations world go, right? They're going to battle for it. And what they're doing already is they're identifying the reasons why people want to travel that way, and trying to figure out how they can differentiate their services, because they're stuck in a real estate form factor that is not the same, right? So they have to come up with other ways and other reasons to be a part of a traveler's journey that keeps them relevant. And that's a multi-billion-dollar battle. So that's unlocking a lot of opportunity for innovation within the traditional hospitality space, and frankly, shaking up everything about the hospitality technology stack, from the way property management systems are constructed to vertical and localized software, and how it interfaces with those systems. So I still think that it's interesting when you see these major innovations and disruptions happening in the categories that for example, Maddie's addressing. There is a ripple effect then through the rest of the industry. I think that's why these times are so dynamic. And you now have these major travel suppliers, whether it be hotel companies, car companies, or airlines, trying to figure out where they fit in with the traveler journey, not just what product are they providing specifically. An airline doesn't want to just be a seat. They want to be part of an entire journey, just like a hotel doesn't want to be a bed. So all of that, I think, is opening up and unlocking a lot of innovation.
That's 100%. All the hospitality industry, and you see the innovation throughout the years pre-COVID, right? Definitely enhancing through COVID and now post-COVID. But what I found out, it comes back to customer service and customer relations as well. You have to still remember the human element of travel and hospitality, right? There's innovation that will always happen in our lifetimes. But what I'm finding a trend, especially in the boutique sector, in the hospitality space, is they're actually ramping up their customer service to make sure the guest is getting an experience beyond that they're used to getting post or pre-COVID, right? But that means now you're ramping up the human element of it, but having services like Maddie's, for example, to give more of an amenity-driven kind of opportunity. It's hand and foot, right? It goes together, right? But what we're finding, at least in my world, is how much more, again, and I'm sorry to repeat myself, but the customer service and human element needs to be not forgotten. And I feel like sometimes in certain worlds, the technology will overrule sometimes, but if you're going, especially again, if you're going after this lifestyle, leisure, and luxury atmosphere, you have to give more of like, people miss each other. I mean, it sounds so simple, right? And I love seeing your guys' faces on Zoom, but I've been traveling so much in the past year just to be around people and interact again. And it's a breath of fresh air, right? So how much I believe in innovation. I'm a big part of it. Again, I can't emphasize the human element to the travel space.
So I'm curious, in addition to the human touch, and Chris, you were saying these folks are going to have to innovate to stay relevant. What kind of innovations have you seen out there that you think are good ones? I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of attempts that fall flat, but what have you seen that you think makes sense and folks are going to get some traction out of when in this new environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the most exciting innovations are coming from entrepreneurs who are literally rethinking the way industrial value chains function. And I'll give you a perfect example. We have an investment in a company called Lifehouse Hotels. And Lifehouse has just completely rethought about the delivery of hospitality in a hotel. And I mean by that, the entire system of delivery. I mean, the hotel industry in a lot of ways hasn't changed the way it delivers its product since the 1950s. They still run night audits. They have teams of people in the back office working on accounting matters, right? You walk up to what feels like a bank teller desk in order to show your ID and credit card again, in order to get your room key. I mean, if you think about it, there are so many antiquated steps that engage the consumer in a typical hotel experience. And what I think a lot of hotel companies have realized is that as revenue per available room night has not kept pace with rising costs of labor, that if you don't figure out how to reinvent the delivery of hospitality, you're going to basically burn under the weight of labor. And so Lifehouse has centralized accounting. They've developed a completely vertically integrated technology stack, all the way from performance marketing at the top funnel through to housekeeping supervisory. And so so that they can eliminate labor that's non-guest facing. To Jason's point, non-guest facing, right? The 4 people in the back office working on accounting matters have very little to do with the delivery of a hospitality experience, but they can crush a P&L.
Yeah.
So so that's the kind of innovation that I think is really exciting. And frankly, before COVID, a lot of industrial players were fat, dumb, and happy. They didn't need to reduce that stuff because the RevPAR was growing to record levels. Everybody was making money. Real estate owners were clipping their coupon. Debt was cheap. It worked. And now that's all been changed. So, I mean, I think that's one of the most exciting things in this generation of entrepreneurs is that we're no longer dealing with just people inventing tools, right? People coming up with the new digital tools that change, or enable productivity in the industry. People are actually starting from the beginning and saying, why do we do it that way? Is there a better way to do that? And I think that's really exciting. And that's why, it's this sort of third wave of innovation is likely to be so much bigger than just the years of tool development that we saw in the early days of tech. So it's a great time to be a young entrepreneur in these industries.
A young entrepreneur like Madi, other than, everybody should be using Mount, what else do you think they should be doing to innovate in this space?
I definitely agree with Jason. It goes back to what does the guest want? And for us, it seems that they want the experience, but they want the convenience. Like having to go book your hotel room and then go do the due diligence and find a bike like 10 feet or a mile down the road and then go try and find it. That's not too convenient. So I think even hotels we've seen are trying to get in the game of how do you supply everything the guest needs at the property, so that the experience starts and stops with them. And I've met some very cool people. Like I met a Airbnb host who has a lakefront property in Canada. He basically makes double the revenue off of upsells than he does off of his nightly booking. He pulls in $1 million just based on upsells for the year in revenue, by curating luxury experiences like a yacht trip, pulling all those experiences together and acting as the concierge as opposed to just someone who owns a house. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, well, I always think that makes me think I should be charging for all of my freebies at my Airbnb.
I think there's a fine line. You don't want to.
I don't think I could charge much for my used boogie board, but
Yeah, but maybe if you took them on a fishing trip, there you go.
Yeah. My husband could do that. I don't want to do that.
Or a secret waterfall hike.
See, but then
Lots of ideas.
Or
Right.
bar hopping.
That's Jason's specialty.
All these
Yeah.
fun things you do
Yeah.
during your time in the cohort.
My specialty is secret waterfalls. But that brings us to another point, which is kind of the backlash. And there's a flip side of all of this too, right? And certainly we've felt it in Hawaii, a couple things that we've gone through, a big backlash against Airbnb, over tourism. So a big backlash against, folks showing everybody their secret waterfalls or Instagram showing everybody our secret waterfalls. And, really having folks in every nook and cranny of our islands where they didn't used to venture. So, where does all of that end up? This new wave of innovation has, some kind of undercurrents to it as well, right? I mean, we want the traveler to have these unique experiences, but there's a price to pay for that. So how do we manage all that going forward? And how does innovation help in the management of all of this?
Yeah, I mean, that's a super important question. And I think that it's just another example of disruption, right? And you could argue that we're in somewhat of the early days of the industry. And really, it's more, not just the industry, it's the stakeholders at large sort of experiencing that pain and discomfort, and it's causing disruption. And what that does is it creates opportunity. And you've got, I think of like Andrew's business, Shaka Guide, as being a great example. And I know Andrew, I think is on here watching today. So shout out.
I
Great,
see Andrew.
He is using intelligent, thoughtful content to sort of, manage that experience, whether it's by giving people, redirecting them in ways that are still very cool, but away from highly sensitive places, or maybe giving them more of a perspective before they go charging in, or, and it becomes that content delivery model becomes a way to articulate rules, to sell tickets, to gate access, and do all the kinds of things that eventually you're going to have to do, because there's no other way to control 12 million people wanting to bombard a place in the era of Instagram. Right. So, but it's a great example of how someone is being thoughtful about innovating in a world where that pain is being felt. And it's, again, I think disruption is where entrepreneurs should look for opportunity. And that's where it's found. It's very rarely found in the status quo.
Jason, do you have any thoughts on these kind of backlash issues and how we manage them?
When you say backlash, you're meaning like making sure, I look at that as making sure we educate and get the messaging out to the visitor before they come to our beautiful state, right? And I don't know if I'm going off topic, but what I try to do in regards to content, especially that we curate for Hawaii, is educate the traveler before they get here, right? And we did something for Hawaiian Airlines called Travel Pono, right? Because I go back to you're the expert at these secret waterfalls. You got to educate people about these secret waterfalls, because if they find out about them on themselves and they ruin the secret waterfalls, then they don't become waterfalls at all, right? So what I really try to kind of express to my team and our partners is there's such a amount of effort that all of us have to do on the content side to the Shaka Guide and stuff, is we need to make sure that the messaging is getting to the visitor before they even step foot in our state. So if you could do that, it will avoid backlash, right? And constantly, and you guys know, I'm not a technology-based company. We're a content company that finds unique distribution points, but utilizing the nuances of new technology and finding new platforms to put our content on is a big part of our business model. But again, to avoid backlash is making sure we're doing, as a state, educating all the visitors before they come.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that our own HTA, the Hawaii Tourism Authority here, has kind of reframed their work from tourism promotion to tourism management. I think that tells you a lot about the state of the industry, at least for us. And I know other communities are having the same issues. And of course, my unbiased opinion is that, technology can solve a lot of these problems, with,
Yeah.
smart management of the tourism issues, things like that. So, for example, right now we have at Hanauma Bay, we have an appointment and reservation system, which I believe is working very well. And I think those are the kinds of things we can do in a lot of places, using the tools that are out there. This isn't rocket science, right? But it helps manage, traffic flows and safety issues and educational issues, all of that, right? Through, some pretty simple ways to kind of manage the flow. So, I think there's some innovations that aren't even that far-fetched that we could be implementing today that would help a lot, with all of these issues. The Airbnb Backlash one is interesting because, of course, I'm biased. I have an Airbnb, but I know it's a very sensitive topic for a lot of folks in Hawaii. And, I guess we'll have to see how that plays out. But to Chris's point, there's a lot of entrenched interests here at work that do not want to see Airbnb, succeed here in the islands. So I don't know what happens to that eventually. But onto the future. So again, just the question around innovation. You guys are exposed to a lot of different companies. So I know Madi, of course, other than Mount, which is amazing innovation platform for amenities rentals. What else have you seen out there that you think is really cool, really different in the travel space?
Oh my gosh. There's just so many.
Well, I know you have a lot of partners that are doing interesting
We do have
things.
a lot of partners.
So
I guess one of the ones that comes to mind is one of our newer partners that just launched. They're a company called Enzo Connect. They're a Canadian company, and it actually is interesting because I think they and a few others are opening up this new, not market, but like sub-market. It's really focused on the guest experience. It's guest experience technology. So it integrates at like an Airbnb level with a property management software company, and its only aim is how can we make the guest experience better by using technology so that you as the host don't have to put in any extra effort, but you get to offer all these great, amazing things. And they make it easier. So I guess the founder had a crazy experience where he went to an Airbnb and they gave him a key in a lockbox, but it was in the middle of winter in Canada. And so the lockbox was frozen shut and he couldn't get the key.
Yeah, I had that same experience. I had that same experience where the lockbox was frozen and I could not get
It's like a lot more common than you would think. And he was like, okay, if this was just automated, like they gave me the door key or whatever, or the, combination, it was a Bluetooth lock or something, it would be so much easier. So that's kind of how his story started and where they're going. So we we integrated the Mount rental feature so that now they can offer amenities too. But I think stuff like that is very interesting.
What about you, Jason? Have you seen anything new and different and interesting out there that you think is indicative of these new trends in the startup world?
Well, I don't know if it's a startup world, but I went to a conference called Independent Lodging Congress. It's a boutique, Hospitality XO. My buddy founded it, and I go there. It's every time they have one. And I think it goes to Chris's point is in regards to the Lighthouse. These hotels are really starting to look at these solutions to like make the service as a whole more seamless, right? And one of them, and I'm blanking on the name, but how many times nowadays when you're checking out of the hotel and you don't have cash to tip the maid service, right? Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't carry cash as much anymore. And I got to find out the name. And I'm sorry.
That's the guy there was a company like that applied to Blue Startups, I think last cohort.
It wasn't. That
I hope not, because then I'll be like, oh no, I missed the nursing.
No, but you can maybe look at it though, because it's you feel, especially if you're in the space, right? When I leave a hotel and I don't have money for a tip, I hardly ever carry cash. Sometimes I don't even carry my debit card. But that was, whether it's innovative or not, it's like giving thanks to these people that are working their butts off and to solve a problem of being able to leave a tip. I think it's like that. I think that's super innovative or it's thought out. because it's like these poor people that are really cleaning up all the hotels sometimes don't get an opportunity to share the, tips. Somehow they did it. They tied it into the whole entire like back end system, from like the chefs to the room service people to the maids. It was pretty unique.
It really sounds like the company that I interviewed. We've got to get to the bottom of this.
I want to relook at them because it is something, again, if you really respect, especially in the leisure and lifestyle and luxury space, you would not tip, right? But it's not embedded in their system. You don't check in or check out of a hotel and press a button that says, leave money for your maid or your person that brings you food every morning.
I was just thinking about this the other day because, we valet park the car. Nobody has cash, like our valet is going to pretty soon, be like, here's my Venmo. I mean, I don't know how this is going to work, but like
Venmo made it very easy now. You could scan the barcode, right? The QR code. And I was just at an event on Saturday, didn't have cash, right? So they had their little Venmo sign out. Yeah. But that was again, to me, that was another thing of like the hotels knowing to not only take care of the guests, the people that are making the guests happy. Yeah. And people forget about that, right? Right. It's like,
especially in this tight labor market, right? We got to keep your workers just as happy. Chris, what's one to watch for you? Maybe you haven't made the investment yet in this company, but you're thinking about it and you think it's interesting.
Yeah, I actually have a few. We're still strong believers that we're in the early innings of what's happening in the alternative accommodation space, private accommodations, STR, whatever you want to label it, the world that was brought to our attention by Airbnb. And Sonder was one of our early Fund 2 investments, and obviously has been successful, but there are some really truly innovative companies playing in this space. Madi referenced the sort of apart hotel kind of concepts of a company out of Germany called Limehome that's doing a great job in that category, really killing it between Germany and Spain. So, we like those guys. And I think there's still a lot going on there. There was another company I met with today that's developed a very sophisticated technology offering for property managers. So this is, it's a bit of a franchise-like experience where you use their brand, but handles everything from revenue management to management of the assets. In fact, Madi, you should probably talk to these guys. They're really dominating France, and they're about to grow aggressively into Spain. But you could integrate into their platform, and then it sort of unlocks all of their places. We're still big fans of, or I should say, studying all things around the digitization of the outdoors. So whether it's, sort of peer-to-peer camper tech stuff, there, another company we're looking at that's sort of a roll up of property management systems and campgrounds, really interesting business in the US with some cool owners. And then I think all things around activities is still very interesting. Love what Andrew's doing, for example, but I think there's also a lot of other, activities or a lot of plays happening in the digitization of tours and activities. So a lot going on. But, one of the big buckets, when you're in venture capital, you have a roadmap. You might have, 4 things that you can talk about, but the biggest bucket you better have is called opportunistic. Because I learn more from entrepreneurs, right? I mean, that's the coolest thing about this industry is it's the inventors, the entrepreneurs that are the great teachers, right? And it's just sitting down with them and hearing how people have developed, insights into markets and things that are inefficient and pain points that exist and why they've got a novel solution to that problem. Yeah. We learn from that every day.
Yes.
There's a lot of opportunity out there.
Yes, we do. We learn from it every day. All right, I want to open up to our audience here to ask questions. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand and I can bring you up on to our stage to talk, or you can put a question into the Q&A. So if you have a question, go ahead and ask it, or like I said, raise your hand or put in the Q&A function. And meanwhile, I guess we'll keep talking. But we were talking about the innovations happening here, and Blue Startups sees a lot as well, right? And we've seen a lot of things coming through again and again and again. And those are always the ones that I find interesting, right? Because it means that nobody's cracked that nut yet, right? If entrepreneurs are trying to solve it over and over and over again, then it means it's not really solved yet, right? Even though we might get a little fatigue about seeing it over and over. So, the one I see over and over that's become like a joke in our office is finding local tour guides. I'm like, yes, I get it, problem, but somehow nobody's figured out quite the solution to it, at least as a household name. So
Exactly.
yeah, so we have a question from Eric. Jan, I don't know, panelists, can you see this question? Eric says, besides Hawaii, what other regions in the world seem to be hotspots for people putting lists to travel once airlines open up again fully? And for example, traditional hotspots like France, Italy, and Spain, any sleeper destinations you've encountered recently?
Oh, that's a cool question.
I think the Caribbean and Latin America is a huge hotspot, especially the Caribbean. I've been hearing more and more. I'm trying to break into that market for a year now. It's been challenging, but if you look at Bahamas, Puerto Rico, and one of our first global partners, Marriott Residences, on a global standpoint, they're spending most of their efforts and building out in the Caribbean. So I think we should all be watching the Caribbean more. We've always heard about it, right? There's a lot of money going into the Caribbean.
Chris, what do you think? What are the up and coming hot spots out there?
Up and coming hot spots. I mean, from a traveler's perspective, I don't really have a sense of sort of where the hot next go-to spots were. I will say I've been spending a bunch of time in the Middle East recently.
Mm-hmm.
And, the UAE, Bahrain, and Saudi are just ferociously committed to turning that into the Caribbean of Europe, right? If you think about it, it's a 5-hour flight directly south. And when it's freezing ass cold and, in Europe, it's a nice place to go. And they've got things going on down there. They also happen to have a lot of dough, right? And with oil at $100 a barrel, they're making even more. So that's going to be what I like about the Middle East too is that it's a bit of a gateway to both India and Africa. And where I think long-term, I mean, there is so much interesting opportunity in Africa. Africa is untouched and it's happening in infrastructure and payments and, at every level, healthcare. There's so much opportunity in Africa. I think of that as a hotspot as well.
Yeah, those are definitely both on my bucket list. I've been watching this travel blogger in the Middle East lately that there are places there that just look absolutely amazing and doesn't look to be overrun, with tourists. So that's also always interesting. Plus the cultural element, which is interesting. So yeah, I've definitely been daydreaming about the Middle East lately. Maddie, what do you see out there?
I don't know about hotspots, but I feel like just international travel is ripe to open up. That's what we're betting on, actually. We've been putting a lot more resources into getting Mount stood up pretty quickly in surrounding countries and such, just because people haven't really had the opportunity to travel in 2 years. That has been widespread. I think if you asked me 6 months ago, I'd say the hotspots would have been like the weird mountain towns and stuff that you can drive like 2 hours to that didn't used to get a lot of tourism, but now do. We were live in Estes Park, Colorado, and they basically, because of COVID, turned every single house into a vacation rental. And then still did not have enough supply to meet the demand of people that wanted to travel there.
Yikes.
It was insane.
Yeah.
The guy who figured out how to manage all the houses, he was very wealthy at that point.
That kind of sounds like there will be some backlash against that from local residents. Too much of a good thing, possibly. All right, next question. Any tips on working with hotels? We're a vendor trying to enhance the guest experience for breastfeeding, pumping moms who are traveling. We just can't get hotels to talk with us. This is a common problem for entrepreneurs. So Jason, you've talked to a lot of hotels. Give us some tips, man.
For having a place for breastfeeding?
Well, I think regardless of what the service is, right, getting your first kind of hotel customer is very tough. You know, if you're a vendor trying to sell into that.
So. I'm trying to think out loud here. Like the concierge comes to my mind, right? Like really figuring out the offerings a hotel has to offer, and like giving a uniqueness to the hotel that some hotels don't got. But she's asking, how do you get in touch with the hotels, right?
Yeah, how do you get them as a customer, you know?
Yeah. I can chime in if you want, Jason. I just did this.
Yeah, let's let Matt, because mine is just like, hey, I want to work with you, and I'm persistent
You're like big enough that it matters.
Until they're like, all right, this guy Jason Cutinella has called me 8 times. We got to hear him.
So that's the tip. You got to call 8 times.
Yeah,
all right, Maddie, what are your tips?
The things that work best for us, I mean, hospitality in general, it's more about who you know than what you're selling. And everyone is willing to help you. It's not cutthroat like the pure technology Silicon Valley industries. Like if you meet someone on LinkedIn, they will give you the introductions to the hotel, but you can't go in cold because no one's going to know who you are. And then they're going to be like, all right, I can't help you. But yeah, I mean, you just got to ask your network, reach out on LinkedIn. And you never know when the connections are going to pay off. I mean, I made a connection through a family friend like a year ago to a hotel group. And just now are they like sending leads my way and stuff, which is amazing, but it took a year to cultivate that relationship. So it takes time, but once the relationships are in place, life is a bit easier.
Well, that's a great point. So Holly Kalani was my big aha moment in working in hospitality. That led to Shutters on the Beach in Casa del Mar in Santa Monica through an introduction. That one led to the Little Nell in Aspen. And then I just got off the phone with Meadowwood in Napa Valley, right? None of those were cold calls of my 8-call persistence. They were all kind of, it was like, it's a slower game. To Maddie's point, it took a year. So, patience, persistence, and utilizing your network, so it's a mixture of all, but hospitality, to Maddie's point, is a very like, hey, meet this person, right? And it kind of works organically. And I'm always one to just do an intro. So the person that wants an intro, I'm more than welcome to give them an intro.
Yeah. Chris, any tips from you on this point?
I would just say, don't forget that somebody actually owns the building. So do a little research on the owner. I mean, if it's a big corporate owner, it's going to be hard. But every now and then you find it's a local consortia, and they can, you get to them and they can make an intro. It can be way more effective. Yeah,
I was going to say the same. Definitely starting with the boutique hotels, right, is going to be a better strategy than trying to go straight to Marriott.
Another thing is, and I can't emphasize it enough, ILC, Independent Lodging Congress, is a room of 200 owners, right, of these beautiful hotels. Go to these little boutique conferences, not these huge ones, right? Like, I've made so much network. I built such a nice network from this boutique conference that I would say almost, 3 people are my investors and about 5 of them are my ongoing clients. So again, it's the networking aspect is probably the most important.
All right, next question. So from our friend Pia Arma, who's also a mentor here at Blue, and the owner of Pineapple Tweed, PR agency, she asks, any post-COVID technology that hospitality is using? So things you've seen in the post-COVID world here to, I guess, maybe assure our safety or things like that.
Well, it started out with that. I mean, I think contactless check-in is a great example. I mean, that came out of nowhere through COVID because, hotel companies wanted to make it safe, as if a plastic key was going to give you COVID. I mean, it's ridiculous. But what they found was that guests actually like to check in on their phone. Lo and behold, that bank teller desk at the lobby of the hotel isn't where everybody wants to stand at 9 o'clock
Yeah.
at night and wait to show their credit card again, right? So that was a classic example of a disruption that led to, you know, a motivation for an innovation that was kind of ridiculous, and actually has now led to, wow, this is actually the way guests want to interact with us, and it's taking off. I mean, I think that will be ubiquitous in the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very unfortunately, we invested in a company that was doing just that, but I guess at the wrong time.
Well, and it's also just because a technology, you know, there's a technology shift or a feature that's being adopted by hotels doesn't mean there's an opportunity to build a business around it. They're not the same thing, right? Because so that's and again, just a plug for Blue Startups. That's the kind of thing you learn when you get involved with a place like Blue Startups and you work with mentors and you get the coaching, is you actually begin to see the contours between feature and company. And entrepreneurs don't build features. Companies build features that sit on top of the stuff they're already doing. Entrepreneurs need to build companies. And so it's hard to discern whether your idea is a feature or a business. And there's no better place to sort of figure that out than, you know, being with an accelerator or some sort of a platform where you get around people who to help to point you in the right direction.
Yep, you're speaking my language, Chris. We talked about that a lot in the program. Maddie, any post-COVID technologies that you've seen?
You know, it's interesting. I think hotels and stuff, not only did they stand up contactless check-in, but they stood up whole apps where basically the app is now controlling everything at your fingertips. And I think that actually allows you to connect to the property a bit more, which is why people are like, oh, this place doesn't offer as much as I thought. Before it was a mystery, you just couldn't find it. But now the app tells you exactly what's there. And it's forcing hotels to get a bit more creative with things. But I think that's one. Yeah, I'd say those are the two biggest.
And do we think those are both kind of here to stay? The contactless and the app?
Yeah, I mean, Marriott just stood up that app like very quickly. So if they're doing it, and everyone's going to do it.
Yeah.
As long as the app is like robust and works well, right? You know, like, and you see a lot of them in like the loyalty side of things, right? If you fly an airline, and you're used to or Uber or Lyft, once you're in it and you're using it and it works well, you'll use it forever. You know, Four Seasons. I was just at a Four Seasons for my girlfriend's birthday, and the app was like literally the best community that answered instantly, right? Every aspect of our stay, like it was instantaneous, and it all went through the app, whether it's room service or getting a towel or whether it's a late checkout. You know, so I can't agree more with both. And the keyless entry is something they were trying to do before COVID, but it was like it wasn't programmed in people's heads. And then COVID happened. It was like, to Chris's point, like you're not getting code from a key card. They actually sanitize them before you get them. Why would they give you a dirty key card? But it just made it easier, because walking to a hotel with a line is not that fun, right? Going right to your room is awesome, right?
Yeah, 100%. All right, we'll make this our last question. I think this is from our friend Andrew. I know we've talked a lot about the hotel space, but what do you think are some upcoming innovations in the post-arrival travel space for tours and activities?
Post-arrival.
Well, I think distribution is a huge play there. I mean, as supply digitizes and companies are able to deliver, you know, digital tickets, QR code tickets and whatnot, you can imagine all of the major players in a traveler's journey being part of the distribution landscape, right? I just don't think that it's all about Viator, because most people make their decisions about what they're going to do when they are actually in destination. It depends on where you look, but I think it's close to 70%.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're not really doing it on the OTAs per se. And so you think about who is actually servicing the guest when they're in destination, whether it's a hotel company, a rent-a-car company, or other, pick your poison. Those could become really interesting distribution channels for tours and activities. But once the content is digitized, or the ticketing, so that you can book, ticket, and go, which, believe it or not, doesn't exist. That's highly analog right now. So, but I think that's coming. That's underway right now. One of our portfolio companies, Redeem, is working on that exact problem.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Maddie? What do you see? This is your space post-arrival tours and activities.
Post-arrival.
Yeah.
We have two assumptions going on at Mount right now. One is that if you put the amenities and the tours and the excursions at point of sale, when they're booking the Airbnb or booking.com or whatever it may be, and it's just at the property when they arrive, that actually might change the behavior of people who arrive and feel like they're being nickeled and dimed. So that's one. And then I think people are definitely spending a lot more money. I think the stat we found was like 83% of travelers are paying for excursions and experiences right now. But there is a massive disconnect between the people who offer it and your property. And I think Airbnb Experience tried to address this, did not do a good job. But still, there's really no way other than word of mouth or just random Google searches to kind of find the local spots of what's out there and being able to book it, unless you're like calling them on the phone. So
Right.
I think there's a lot of innovation left to be done there as well.
Yep, for sure. Luckily, we have a few companies in our portfolio working on that too. So, all right, well, we're going to wrap it up there. I want to thank Maddie and Chris and Jason very much for joining us here today, and remind our audience, Blue Startups is recruiting for cohort 14. You can find the application on our website, bluestartups.com. We invest up to $100,000 into each company. Our program this year will run June through September, and it will be a 13-week program, 6 weeks in person in Honolulu, 6 weeks virtual, and 1 week in San Francisco. So you can apply now for that. And we look forward to talking with all of you. Thanks everyone for tuning in today. Thanks to some of our mentors and other alumni who joined us today, and also the rest of you who I'm hoping are innovating in the travel space as we speak, and we'll get to see what you're working on very soon. So awesome job. Thank you, panelists. Yay. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, you
Bye.
guys. Thank you. Take care.
Have a great day.
Thank you.